Hi, so it's me again, and for this video we will talk about exempting circumstances naman. So what are exempting circumstances? These are grounds for exemption from punishment because the agent of the crime is wanting any of the conditions which make the act voluntary or negligent. The offender who has the burden of proving his entitlement does not incur criminal liability, but in general there is civil liability because of the because of the absence of agent or agents of voluntariness na na-discuss na natin before, which are freedom, intelligence, and or intent. Okay. So unlike justifying circumstances, yung justifying circumstances kasi wala talagang crime. So, walang criminal liability and walang civil liability. But for exempting circumstances, merong civil liability kasi merong crime. Merong crime pero walang criminal liability but merong civil liability. So, yun. Except dun sa justifying circumstance wherein pwedeng i-shoulder yung civil liability ng person who benefited from the act of avoiding a greater evil or injury. So, ano yung exempting circumstances? First, we have imbecility or insanity. That is, if the crime is committed by an imbecile or an insane person, and that person did not act during lucid interval. So, yung basis dito is the absence of intelligence. So, mamaya iisa-isahin natin yan. Next is minority. So, exempting if below 15 years of age yung offender with or without discernment. Doesn't matter kung yung action niya with or without discernment. Basta below 15 siya, exempting circumstance na agad. Exempting if over 15 years of age, meaning pag saktong 15, pag saktong 15, exempting with or pag saktong 15, exempting without discernment. Pero pag may discernment, hindi pwede. Pag 15 and above. Pero pag below 15, with or without discernment, exempting siya. So, yung basis natin is absence of intelligence din. So, under Section 58 of RA 9344, only in crimes of prostitution, sniffing rugby, and mendicancy. So, yung mendicancy, ito yung nagbebeg. Minors who are over 15 but below 18 years of age, with or without discernment, exempting. Age of sexual consent is 16 years old. So, a rape of a person below 16 years old is now statutory rape. Dati kasi 12 years old yung statutory rape. Ngayon, pag below 16 na. Pag 16, pwede na magbigay ng sexual consent. Pag below, hindi pwede. Sex between minors. If the age gap between them is less than 3 years, provided that the sex is consensual, non-exploitative, and non-abusive, it is an exempting circumstance. So, bibilangin mo, kapag minors sila, both parties, pag 3 years lang yung gap, walang statutory rape, and exempting siya, provided na consensual. Sex with minor below 16 years of age if age gap between them is less than 3 years, provided that sex is consensual, non-exploitative, and non-abusive, exempting circumstance. So, yan. So, next, exempting circumstance is accident without fault or intention of causing it. An accident is when, in the performance of a lawful act, there was injury or damage because of circumstances not foreseeable and unavoidable despite exercising due care. So the basis here is the lack of negligence and intent. Next exempting circumstance is compulsion of irresistible force with the use of force, violence, or intimidation, or quote-unquote duress. Diba? There is compulsion by means of physical force which is irresistible and must come from a third person. So the basis of this exempting circumstance is the absence of freedom. Next exempting circumstance is impulse of uncontrollable fear with the use of an actual and immediate threat or intimidation or duress and the duress cannot be invoked if the offended party had the opportunity to escape, defend himself, or engage in equal combat. The existence of uncontrollable fear, which is real and imminent, must be present, and this fear of an injury must be greater than or equal to that committed. Fear should not be speculative, fanciful, or remote. Such compulsion must leave no opportunity to the accused for escape or self-defense in equal combat. The basis here is the absence of freedom. In the eyes of the law, the circumstance is appreciated in treason because the act of joining an enemy cannot be justified except for the fear of immediate death. And yung last exempting circumstance natin is insuperable or lawful cause. There is an act which is required by law to be done, but the person fails to perform the act due to some lawful or insuperable cause, and the basis is lack of intent. So, balikan natin isa-isa. Against the first is imbecility or insanity. Imbecile or dito, the imbecile or insane person did not act during lucid interval. So, the fact na imbecile siya or insane siya at the time of committing the act, it is an exempting circumstance. So, who is an imbecile? One who, while advanced in age, has a mental development comparable to that of a child between 2 and 7 years of age. So, regardless ng edad niya, yung utak niya parang 2 to 7 years of age. In imbecility, it is necessary that there is a complete deprivation of intelligence in committing the act. So, feeble-mindedness naman is not imbecility, and therefore, feeble-mindedness is not exempting. But it can be appreciated as a mitigating circumstance, which we will discuss later. A feeble-minded person could still distinguish right from wrong, kaya hindi siya exempting. To be feeble-minded is to be mentally slow. People with an IQ below a certain number are feeble-minded in a technical sense. So, hindi exempting yung feeble-mindedness. Yung exempting is imbecility, which is yung mental development mo talaga medyo slow, kaya yung mental age ng person na imbecile is 2 to 7 years of age. So, yung development ng brain medyo mabagal. Insanity naman is a complete deprivation of intelligence in committing the act, which makes such insane person exempt from criminal liability except if he acted while in a lucid interval. Mere abnormality of mental faculties is not enough, especially if the offender has not lost consciousness of his acts. Kasi kapag ka-insane ka, there are times that you are okay. So, if you committed a crime na clear yung mind mo, or you are in a lucid interval, then you will be liable and you cannot claim for an exempting circumstance due to insanity. Pero if of course, at that moment that you committed the crime, you are suffering from insanity, then it is an exempting circumstance. So as a general rule, insanity is an exempting circumstance except during lucid interval. The insane acts with intelligence kasi during lucid interval. Craziness is not insanity. Mere abnormality of the mental faculties will not exclude imputability. The accused must be so insane as to be incapable of entertaining a criminal intent. One suffering from psychosis who takes medication is in remission of symptoms, meaning he would not actively exhibit the symptoms of psychosis, and it is only when one fails to take his medication and or drinks alcohol that the symptoms of psychosis may be triggered, depriving one of his will. However, that one is in remission of symptoms or has failed to take the prescribed medicine is not a conclusive finding as to the sanity of the accused at the time of the commission of the crime. The psychotic may have varying degrees of awareness of the consciousness of his acts, which awareness would also depend on the degree of psychosis at the time of the commission of the act. So, laging tinitignan to na case-to-case basis. The burden of proving insanity is on the prosecution. Insanity should exist before or at the moment of the act or acts under prosecution. An accused invoking insanity admits to have committed the crime but claims that he or she is not guilty because of insanity. The testimony or proof of an accused's insanity must, however, relate to the time immediately preceding or coetaneous with the commission of the offense with which he is charged. There must be a complete deprivation of intelligence at committing the act for there to be insanity. Mere abnormality of the mental faculties, again, will not exclude imputability. So, nasabi na natin yan kanina. Conditions not considered as insanity. So, ito yung examples. This is not an exclusive list. Examples lang. Amnesia in and of itself is no defense to a criminal charge unless it is shown by competent proof that the accused did not know the nature and quality of his action and that it was wrong. Craziness and unusual behaviors such as smiling to oneself and calling a chicken late at night are not proof of complete absence of intelligence because not every aberration of the mind or mental deficiency constitutes insanity. And pedophilia is also not insanity because a pedophile could still distinguish between right and wrong. So, yung mga examples ito galing to sa cases. Either two tests must be satisfied for insanity to be appreciated. First is the cognition test and second is the volition test. So the cognition test is whether the accused acted with complete deprivation of intelligence, and the volition test is whether the accused acted in total deprivation of freedom of will. So what is an opinion testimony? It is the testimony that establishes the insanity of an accused, which may be given by a witness who is intimately acquainted with the accused, or by a witness who has rational basis to conclude that the accused was insane based on the witness' own perception of the accused, or by a witness who is qualified as an expert, such as a psychiatrist. The testimony or proof of the accused's insanity must relate to the time preceding or coetaneous with the commission of the offense with which he is charged. So what are the judicial effects of insanity? So immediately preceding or coetaneous with the commission of the offense charged, exempt siya from liability. During trial, if during trial siya naging insane, proceedings are suspended and the accused is committed to a mental institution. If after judgment or while serving sentence, the execution of judgment is suspended and the accused is committed to a hospital, the period of confinement in the hospital is counted for the purpose of the prescription of the penalty. So para na rin siyang nag-serve ng sentence sa jail pero sa hospital, sa mental hospital, mental institution. So, yun yung sa insanity or imbecility. Next is minority. So, discuss natin ulit yung minority. So, who is a child? A child is a person under 18 years of age. Who is a child at risk? It is a child who is vulnerable to and at the risk of committing criminal offenses because of personal, family, and social circumstances, such as but not limited to coming from a dysfunctional or broken family, or being without a parent or guardian, living in a community with a high level of criminality or drug abuse, being abused by any person through sexual, physical, psychological, mental, economic, or any other means, and the parents or guardian refuse or are unwilling or unable to provide protection for the child, being abandoned or neglected, and after diligent search and inquiry the parent or guardian cannot be found, living situations of armed conflict, being a member of a gang, being exploited sexually or economically, being out of school, and being a street child, quote unquote. So, who is a child in conflict with the law, or CICL? It is a child who is alleged as, or accused of, or adjudged as having committed an offense under Philippine laws. So what is the diversion program? It is a program that the CICL is required to undergo after he or she is found responsible for an offense without resorting to formal court proceedings. What is intervention? It is a series of activities designated to address issues that cause the child to commit an offense. It may take the form of an individualized treatment program, which may include counseling, skills training, education, and other activities that will enhance his or her psychological, emotional, and psychosocial well-being. What is discernment? Discernment is the capacity of the child at the time of the commission of the offense to understand the differences between right and wrong and the consequences of wrongful act. Discernment is that mental capacity of a minor to fully appreciate the consequences of his unlawful act. Such capacity may be known and should be determined by taking into consideration all the facts and circumstances afforded by the records in each case. So, anong difference ng intent sa discernment? So, when you say, intent and discernment, these are both products of mental processes within the person. However, pag intent, it is the desire of the desire of a person to do something, no, na inintend niya talaga, like sinadya na talaga, ginusto niya yan, determination niya, intention niya to do it. However, discernment naman relates to more of the moral significance that the person ascribes to the said act, like what is right and wrong. So, pag-weigh niya ng right and wrong. Status offenses. Any conduct not considered an offense or not penalized if committed by an adult shall not be considered an offense that shall not be punished if committed by a child. Status offenses punishable by local government ordinances include, among others, curfew violations, truancy, parental disobedience, disorderly conduct, anti-smoking laws, anti-drinking laws, mendicancy, and trespassing. Such ordinances shall provide for intervention programs such as counseling. So there is a presumption of minority. A child in conflict with the law enjoys the presumption of minority. In case of doubt as to the age of the child, it shall be resolved in his or her favor. Of course, hindi ipapresume na minor ka kung talagang halata namang matanda ka na or walang question sa age mo. Pero when there is an allegation na parang bata siya or may claim na bata siya or minor siya, then the presumption is sa minority. Of course, this is disputable by evidence. So how do you determine age? Any person alleging the age of the child in conflict with the law has the burden of proving the age of such child. It may be proven by the child's birth certificate, baptismal certificate, other pertinent documents, and in the absence of such documents, age may be based on the testimony of the child, the testimony of a member of the family related by affinity or consanguinity, testimony of other persons, physical appearance of the child, and other relevant evidence. So, mga factors that they take into consideration. If walang child's birth certificate, if walang baptismal certificate, and other pertinent documents. So, saka lang magre-research sa mga ganito. Pero of course, kung may birth certificate, yun yung best evidence. Automatic suspension of sentence. A child under 18 years old at the time of the commission of the crime who is found guilty shall be placed under suspended sentence without need of application, even if the child is already 18 or more at the time of the pronouncement of guilt, unless declared disqualified. The court shall dismiss the cases against a child whose sentence has been suspended and against whom disposition measures have been issued in a judgment of acquittal of a minor. Pag promulgated na to, the decision shall immediately take effect without suspension, so agad-agad. Offenses not applicable to children. So, pag below 18 years old, tas ito yung kinumit na crimes, exempt from prosecution, walang kasuhan at all. So, vagrancy and prostitution, mendicancy, and sniffing of rugby. Civil liability arising from minors' felonious acts. So the exemption from criminal liability does not include exemption from civil liability, which shall be enforced in accordance with existing laws. As a general rule, the parents shall be liable for damages, except if they were able to prove that they were exercising reasonable supervision over the child at the time the child committed the offense and exerted reasonable effort and utmost diligence to prevent or discourage the child from committing an offense. Okay. So, confirm lang muna natin yung 15 years. Yung age before tayo mag-move sa next circumstance. Exempting Okay, so clarify ko lang, 15 years of age or under. If pag 15 years of age or under, meaning pag eksaktong 15 years of age, mali yung sabi ko kanina, pag saktong 15 years of age or under, with or without discernment, exempting. Pero pag over 15 years of age, then pag without discernment lang siya magiging liable. Over 15 but below 18, of course. Kasi hindi ka naman pwede mag-claim for minority if over 18 ka na, diba? So, again, pag saktong 15, okay, ulitin lang natin. Pag saktong 15 or below, exempting circumstance agad. Pag above 15 and below 18, but below 18, kailangan may discernment para maging exempting. Kapag yung crimes are sniffing rugby, prostitution, vagrancy, mendicancy, kahit basta below 18, walang prosecution. Yung age of sexual consent is 16 years of age. So, pag below 16 years of age, statutory rape. Meaning, pag magbigay ng consent yung 15-year-old na makipag-sex, kapag nakipag-sex ka sa 15-year-old, walang bisa yung sexual consent niya. Statutory rape yan agad. So, rape pa rin yan talaga. Regardless na pumayag yung 15-year-old, 14-year-old, 13-year-old or below. Pero pag saktong 16 na siya at nagbigay siya ng consent, possible na hindi statutory rape. So, kasi may iba pang mga circumstances na kailangan consider. Kapag sex between minors naman, dapat yung age gap is less than 3 years. Hindi 3 years less than 3 years. Hindi umabot ng 3 years. So, pag sex between minors, hindi siya rape as long as yung gap is less than 3 years and yung sex is consensual, non-exploitative, non-abusive. So, magiging exempting circumstance siya. So, kapag sex naman with a minor, provided na less than 16 years din yung gap. Okay. So, now let's go to accident. Accident without fault or intention of causing it is an exempting circumstance. So, an accident is when, in the performance of a lawful act, there was injury or damage because of circumstances not foreseeable and unavoidable despite exercising due care. So, discuss natin yung accident. So, ano ulit yung accident? It is an unintended and unforeseen, injurious occurrence. Something that does not occur in the usual course of events or that could not be reasonably anticipated. An unforeseen and injurious occurrence not attributable to mistake, negligence, neglect, or misconduct. So, yung requisites are, again, person is performing a lawful act with due care, but for some reason, he causes injury to another by mere accident, which was unintended, unforeseen, and unusual, and on the part of the person causing the injury, he had no fault or intention of causing such. So, ano naman yung negligence? It is the failure to observe for the protection of the interest of another that degree of care, precaution, and vigilance which the circumstances justly demand, without which such other person suffers injury. So, importante na sa accident, walang negligence on the part of the person who caused injury due to an accident. Kapag may negligence, hindi pwedeng i-claim yung exempting circumstance na to. So, yung accident at yung negligence are intrinsically contradictory. So, one cannot exist with the other. Bawal na accident tapos may negligence. Dapat, for accident to happen, walang negligence para maging exempting circumstance. Kapag yung accident may negligence, merong liability. So, what is, yan lang ba yung kailangan natin for accident? Okay. So next tayo. What is a compulsion of irresistible force with use of force, violence, or intimidation? So, again, yung basis natin dito is absence of freedom. When you say irresistible force, the person invoking the circumstance must show that the force exerted was such that it reduced him, yung offender, to a mere instrument who acted not only without his will but against it. There is uncontrollable fear. If the source of the fear is real and imminent, and such fear rendered the actor immobile and subject to the will of another, making the actor, and for that moment lang, an automation without a will of his own. So in other words, in effect, he could not be any more than like an instrument then, acting involuntarily against his will. So pag may irresistible force and uncontrollable fear, then there is an exemption in criminal liability because they acted against their will. So what do we mean by insuperable naman? So insuperable cause. It means insurmountable. A cause which was lawfully, morally, or physically, which has lawfully, morally, or physically prevented a person to do what the law commands. Okay. So, yun. Lack of intent. So again, yung exempting circumstances natin is imbecility or insanity, minority, accident without fault or intention of causing it, compulsion of irresistible force with the use of force, violence, intimidation, duress, impulse of uncontrollable fear with the use of an actual immediate threat or intimidation, and anim yan. Sixth is insuperable or lawful cause. So, tingin naman tayo sa cases. Yun natin yung mga... So, ito, the offender acted while in a dream daw. So, is it liable? Hindi, of course, that is exempting. Persons with dementia praecox are disqualified from legal responsibility because they have no control of their acts. Dementia praecox symptoms are similar to manic depression psychosis. So, the important thing is sanity during the commission of the crime. Ano to sa case ni Formiones pinatay niya yung asawa niya because of jealousy, and then humiga lang siya dun sa tabi ng corpse ng wife niya, tapos nagbaliw-baliwan siya while in jail. But the point is, the fact that he felt jealousy at that time is proof of his sanity. Kasi only a sane person would have these feelings of jealousy and act on it He got mad dahil akala niya yung asawa niya nanlalalaki. Diba? Sa brother-in-law, sa brother pa niya. So, yun. So, nanenegate yung, claim niya for insanity. Kasi, he was able to understand he was able to understand the situation na parang his wife cheated on him with his brother, and that in his mind, of course, resulted to jealousy, and that he wanted to hurt his wife. So that's something that, a sane person could process. So, schizophrenia, of course, is insanity. Insanity must exist immediately before or at the precise moment, precise moment of the commission of the act. Otherwise, liable. Mental illness is not insanity. Okay, so I think that's it for exempting circumstances. And then sa next video naman, I'll just take a short break. Mitigating circumstances naman tayo.